Where LSU stands with their next 3 portal targets. We've got the info. It's Locked On LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making this your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Basketball Tigers. Ooh, out of obligation, we'll talk about the game against Mizzou here shortly. The baseball Tigers, much more interesting conversation. We'll talk about a couple of Tigers earning preseason All-America recognition as we are at this point 37 days away from first pitch, February the 14th, out at the box. But we had our weekly visit with Shea Dixon on 3, the Bengal Tiger. And usually throughout the year, our convos with Shea are about high school recruiting. But here at this point of the year, naturally, it's about the transfer portal as LSU continues building their roster through the portal. And LSU has 14 portal signees. You know that by now. As a matter of fact, Josh Thompson from Northwestern and Destin Hill, the receiver from Florida State, they became official on Tuesday with their paperwork coming in. So those are officially now. We knew they were done, but with the semester starting now, they are official. So LSU officially with 14 portal additions. And we've talked about here on the channel and on the show that LSU's got 3 more known targets lingering right now. Tamarcus Cooley, a defensive back from NC State, Keontae Scott, a defensive back from Auburn, and Donovan Green, a tight end from Texas A&M. So if you missed any of our conversations about those 3 players in our previous couple of episodes, I would highly encourage go back and check those out just in these previous couple of episodes here. You can check that out. But we had a chance to visit with Shea Dixon from On 3, and Shea gave his thoughts on those targets and started with the one that apparently is the biggest fish remaining for LSU right now.
Yeah, I think at this stage, at least based off of kind of what I've heard so far, is that a priority target is Cooley. Look, he is a safety in the eyes of the LSU staff. NC State had all 4 of their starting DBs enter the portal, all on one day, too, which is a big blow. So all these kids are visiting different schools, a lot of them with SEC schools, but Cooley was at Ole Miss yesterday. I guess he'll probably leave today. He'll be at LSU next, and then on his schedule is Missouri and Kentucky. So you'd have 4 SEC schools if he goes through with all of them. But 6 foot, 200, started plenty of games. I know PFF is, you can use it when you want to use it, and when it doesn't make any sense, it doesn't. But for what it's worth, he was the highest graded guy on the highest graded player on their defense this past year at NC State. So he'll be one to watch, I think, because they've got to find at least one safety. And as we learned a year ago, you hate to go into the spring portal season with a real need. So I think they want to come away with this safety here. And as you said, multiple NC State guys, and then Donovan Green, a tight end, who coming from A&M was just freshman All-American. He was a big-time recruit. And then he got injured, and then out a year, and then last year he played this past season, played special teams and in a couple blowout games, and I think he just needed a fresh start of, hey, look, I may not be back to where I was as that elite 5-star type guy that A&M grabbed, but LSU just needs some depth at the position, and he's a guy who I think if healthy or even at 80% of what he once was, is a pretty talented prospect. So we'll see how the league goes. Maybe they do keep the 15, 16 guys, and I think that LSU's goal, Matt, right now, and we'll see them battle Ole Miss a lot in the portal. They have already, but that's where Cooley, the safety we mentioned from NC State, is. And he was once committed there out of high school before he decommitted and then stayed closer to home. So if he gets out of Oxford without signing and ends up coming to LSU's campus for that visit, that's notable because it means he's certainly open to what LSU's pitching, which is a chance to start.
All right, so it's so interesting how Shea finished there, talking about how if Cooley gets out of Oxford, it's something to consider if you follow the NFL and NFL free agency. When the league year begins, and this isn't an NFL show, but I'll make this make sense. When the league year begins and when free agency happens, there's this feeling that when you get a player in your facility for a free agent visit, you never want to let them leave without signing the contract, because it means they're going to go on other free agent visits, so they're keeping their options open. If you bring them on a free agent visit, you want to sign them on that free agent visit. Don't let them get away. And so these transfer portal visits are actually kind of behaving the same way. Remember Patrick Payton? Patrick Payton visited LSU on a Saturday, and they locked it down. Brian Kelly went into that press conference on that Saturday and said, we have something that'll be breaking in the next day, but it's still on our end. Like, they didn't let him leave. Jack Pyburn from Florida, same thing. Jack Pyburn went out to dinner with LSU with the LSU's coaches on Saturday, again on Sunday, and it was done. I mean, it was locked up before he left campus. Braylon Moore, same thing. Braylon Moore took one visit. The Virginia Tech Center took one visit. He visited LSU. They locked it down. He went back to Virginia and didn't make another visit. So you want to make sure that Cooley gets to campus. So what you're holding your breath for is to make sure he does, and there's nothing you can do about this really, but make sure he doesn't sign with Ole Miss to whatever extent you can. Maybe it's calling his representative, seeing what their offer is, offering more money if that's what it takes. But the bottom line is, if he leaves Oxford without signing, I mean, there's two things. You got to make sure he leaves Oxford without signing. And then whenever he gets here, make sure he doesn't leave without being a part of LSU's class. Remember, the semester's about to start. So you're getting into crunch time for these guys, if they want to be eligible to compete in spring football as you're into January here and getting close to the start of the semester. The other thing, too, is the numbers there. You're at 14. I've told you so many times, and you heard Shea reiterate it there, they're going to add a safety. They do not, LSU staff does not want to get into a situation like they were a year ago in the spring portal window where you were desperate. Like they were desperate for a defensive tackle, and they had no leverage. And Dominic Williams wanted $1.2 million, and Simeon Barrow wanted $750,000 or whatever it was, and LSU wasn't spending at that point. And so they got left out in the cold and had to go bargain bin shopping, and they landed JVR Suggs, who again did some nice things, but wasn't the impact defensive tackle that you were looking for. So they're going to add a safety. And they've missed already on some high-profile guys, missed on the safety from Jacksonville State, missed on safety from Purdue. There have been some guys they wanted that they haven't gotten. And, this is an instance where you're I don't want to say scraping the bottom of the barrel, because Tamarcus Cooley is a high-level prospect. He played 700 defensive snaps for NC State this year and is a safety and is a plug-and-play starter if you get him. But again, you don't want to be going to a last resort at safety. You want to get an immediate impact guy like you have at basically every other position here throughout this portal cycle. We also talked to Shea. And by the way, he obviously talked about Donovan Green there as well, the tight end. It was interesting in our conversation with Shea. And my contention with Green has been, that's a guy from was a freshman All-American at Texas A&M in 2022, tore his ACL before the 2023 season, and now in 2024 really was just a reserve. So he's looking for a fresh start. And he's got 2, maybe 3 years remaining if he can get a medical. But you sign Bauer Sharp, who's got 1 year of eligibility remaining from Oklahoma. He's a plug-and-play starter. You've got Trey'Dez Green coming back. You got J.D. LaFleur coming in. Yes, it would be depth, but is someone like Green looking for not to go be a depth piece, but a place to go and be a starter right away? That opportunity may not exist at LSU, but if LSU does flex out Trey'Dez Green, and if they want to use 2 inline blockers at tight end, they can, because quite honestly, Brian Kelly can show him film and say, look at what LSU did this year. You had Mason Taylor, and then you had Bo Bordelon. I mean, they put a tight end jersey number on Bo Bordelon to make him a blocker. Now, he was never going to go catch a pass, but that's how desperate they were for help with a big physical tight end. maybe there is a path to the field immediately for Donovan Green at LSU, and maybe there's a big NIL opportunity as well. So those visits will take place this week. As we know more, of course, we'll talk about it here, Locked On LSU. Okay, when we come back, we also talked with Shea about, after these three, what possibly could be next for LSU. You'll hear that next. Locked On LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about? Or maybe that you were paying for twice? Well, that has happened to millions of people. You have a few subscriptions you didn't realize you were paying for, and Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending. It helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions. Reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So as LSU continues through this portal cycle, 14 signees, 3 players visiting this week. And again, I don't necessarily believe that LSU is going to land all 3. Just like we've seen throughout this portal cycle already, you're not going to get every player that you want to get. You just want to make sure you get impact guys at your greatest position of need. So if I were to say it, Keontae Scott as a veteran defensive back would be a luxury. Donovan Green would be depth at tight end. That would be a luxury. A guy like Tamarcus Cooley, that's an absolute must. You've got to land a safety, a starting caliber safety. I've told you here that LSU does have a silent commit. That's what I've been told. LSU has a silent commit at safety. But the fact that they continue pursuing other talented safeties in the portal tells you they are leaving nothing to chance. It's how important this is for LSU to make sure they get help at safety. So I asked Shea Dixon as we finished our conversation, what might be next for LSU in this portal cycle? These 3 visiting this week, and here's how Shea...
I think safety and tight end, obviously, and if some best available comes out here, because remember, the portal's closed, but for every team that played in the bowl game, when your season ends, you get 5 extra days there for a kid to enter the portal. LSU's 5 days are up now. We'll see if anybody else pops up, but that would have put them at 19 guys leaving. And I say that for this is that if everyone that's currently announced is staying, they're still looking for a tackle. And they've been high on Tyree Adams, and we know Weston Davis was a 5-star, but it seems, could you put Weston Davis at right tackle next year and feel good about it? I'd say they'd probably say yeah, but their portal approach is aggressive enough to where they're going out there and trying to say, hey, let's keep adding starters. We added a center, we added a guard. That's the 2 transfers on the O-line so far. Can you add a guy at right tackle or left tackle that's got proven experience and, again, maybe bridges that gap a bit more, and but maybe even more so competition, and puts you in a spot where next year you're competing or expected to compete, right, Matt? If this is a really impressive portal class after a really nice signing class of high school guys and a returning starting quarterback who's considered arguably maybe against Drew Aller, and I don't know what Quinn Ewers is up to, but one of the best quarterbacks in college football next year. I would have to think that sort of their moves here are showing us it. And if they add another alignment, that they're pretty bought into winning, literally, next year.
Yeah. So remember, we have talked about offensive line here as well. You've added Braylon Moore, who is your plug-and-play starting center. You've added Josh Thompson from Northwestern. Now, here's the interesting caveat. And when we talked about Thompson, I mentioned this, but I'll mention it here again. And if you wish, you could go back and listen to or watch the full episode that we did about Josh Thompson, the Northwestern offensive lineman, whenever he signed with LSU. But Thompson in 2023 was the starting right tackle at Northwestern. And in 2024, he started at right guard. So he can play either. And as I understand it, the plan is If LSU adds an offensive tackle in the portal, then Thompson can play guard and that person can play tackle. If they don't add a tackle in the portal, then Thompson can play tackle. And then you assess your guard position where you'd have Braylon Moore at center, Thompson at one tackle, maybe right tackle, Tyree Adams, very likely as your left tackle. And then you look at your guard positions where DJ Chester could kick out and play guard. Paul Mabinga started 5 games for you at guard this year and improved. You've got the young guys with Carius Kernan, Solomon Thomas coming in. You've got Bo Bordelon, who started the bowl game at right guard. So you can make it work, but obviously you would love to have a starting tackle to where, your center could be Braylon Moore, your right guard could be Josh Thompson, and maybe your right or left tackle could be an elite level tackle out of the portal. I have been asked about Elijah Pritchett. So Elijah Pritchett started 13 games at right tackle for Alabama this season. He entered the portal over the weekend. I have not heard from anyone associated with LSU that they are pursuing Pritchett. What I have heard, and I've told you, is that LSU had silent commits from a safety and an offensive tackle. However, as this process has gone, there's been maybe a little bit of a bidding war. And so the confidence level, the certainty maybe has waned a little bit, which has forced LSU or caused LSU to go be more aggressive in the portal to make sure they don't get left holding the bag. So it's hard to bet against LSU and this staff right now in this portal cycle because they have been so successful at addressing every need. And when you have the number one portal class, it kind of feels like you're going to get everything and everyone you want. That, of course, isn't always the case, as we've seen with the issues so far trying to get a starting caliber safety. But the Tigers have a need. They have a team that is going to compete for the playoff in 2025, and they have money to spend. So I'll say it again. LSU will not kick off against Clemson next year without adding a starting caliber safety. Maybe it's one of the guys. Maybe it's Tamarcus Cooley. Maybe it's a silent commit from someone on one of the remaining playoff teams. Maybe it'll be someone in the spring portal window. We hope that isn't the case, but LSU is going to add a starting caliber safety before they kick off against Clemson. And then we'll also keep an eye very closely on what happens there on the offensive line. But I do believe that LSU, with the 2 portal additions and the players they have returning and coming in, they have enough. If they have to go play Clemson August the 30th, with the offensive line group they have today, I feel plenty confident in them. I'm not telling you it's going to be a dominant unit, but I feel plenty confident with Braylon Moore at center and Josh Thompson at guard or tackle, some combination of Tyree Adams, DJ Chester, Paul Mabinga, all getting a year older, another year in the strength conditioning program, another year's worth of experience, and then the young guys that we talked about as well providing depth. I feel like you have enough that Brad Davis can work with to piece together a more than serviceable offensive line. Boy, you would love to go get one more starter out of this group. Okay, it is Locked on LSU, your team every day. We'll knock out our final break, and when we come back, the LSU baseball Tigers with some fantastic news. Unfortunately, not the same for the basketball Tigers. We'll wrap up that next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Basketball Tigers get blown out by Missouri. If you didn't watch the game, good for you. Tigers scored the first bucket of the game. Corey Chest, we're up 2-0. Never led again. Comedy of errors. Missouri, like we talked about, one of the best teams in the country at turning teams over. LSU commits way too many turnovers. Double-digit turnovers in the first half led to 15 points off of turnovers for Mizzou in the first half. Mizzou led 42-27. They had a 15-point halftime lead, and it just didn't really get better for LSU in the second half as Mizzou ballooned the lead past 20. Tigers fought hard. They got it within 14, 13 a couple times. 1 point. LSU got it to 14. Mizzou quickly answered with a 3 right back to 17. And it's just, it's what it is. I don't know that there's a ton of reason to talk about this game. I think there's just a bigger picture question for LSU basketball, which is, the direction they're going. And I've been a big fan of Matt McMahon's, and I think he's a really good coach. And Matt inherited a terrible situation. You've heard me, if you're an everydayer, and thank you for being here every day, you've heard me say, LSU gave Matt McMahon a 7-year contract because they had to. how were you going to attract a coach to take a job where you didn't know if there was going to be postseason sanctions, you didn't know if there was going to be roster sanctions, scholarship limits, restrictions? Like you didn't know. Hey, come take this job. You might be short scholarships, you might not be able to go to the postseason, but come take this job. Like who would do that? So they paid him a lot of money and they had to give him long-term security. So you had to be convicted that he's the guy. The first year, as we always said, was a punt. Second year, they made the NIT. And this was a year where it looked like LSU was going to be able to make that step and become a tournament team. The unfortunate part for LSU is you're in a league where Tennessee, who was previously unbeaten and the number one team in the country, just lost by 30 to Florida. It's literally the deepest the SEC has ever been. I mean, literally, that's not hyperbole. The league, you never had 16 teams before, but it's never been this deep and talented. So someone's going to finish last. And LSU and South Carolina likely are going to be fighting for the honors there, unfortunately. I mean, your opportunity to maybe get off to a good start. I was talking to John Brady about this. He said, look, I really thought LSU had to go 2-2 in their first four because the next four looked brutal. And going 2-2 here to start looks like that's just an impossibility after losing at home to Vanderbilt and losing by double digits on the road to Missouri, who's one of the lower teams in the conference. Missouri lost their SEC opener as well. Now, they lost to Auburn, who's one of maybe the best team in the country. But in any event, this is going to be a long season because I don't know how you find a path to 8 wins in conference play in this conference against that schedule when you're playing like LSU is. I think there's a bigger picture question that needs to be answered, and is LSU ever going to take basketball seriously, or is it going to be a bridge for baseball? Listen, I read your comments. I read your tweets to me. Everyone keeps asking, can we start talking about baseball? And as a matter of fact, I'm going to in just a minute because 2 LSU baseball Tigers were named preseason All-American that I'm going to talk about here in just a second. But when LSU decides it wants to be really good at something and commits the resources to being really good, it's really good. Like football, obviously, you don't have a choice. I mean, football, everyone is football rabid, but it's also the thing that funds your entire athletic department. LSU decided they were going to be good in gymnastics. They went and hired Jay Clark away from Georgia. They built the gymnastics practice facility. Jay came in, recruited the best athletes, and look at what he has built. Dee Dee Bro was the coach for 40 years and didn't do squat. I mean, she held that position for 40 years, never winning anything because nobody cared. Once they decided they were going to care, they went and hired Jay Clark, who brought the best gymnast here and won a national championship. I mean, it fundamentally changed the program because Jay's great. When LSU decides it wants to be great at baseball, LSU decided 40 years ago when Skip Bertman came, they were going to be great in baseball. And they were the first to build a gorgeous new stadium. And they've got the Marucci, hitting facility behind right field. They've just renovated the box. Of course, they've invested money in NIL. Like LSU is committed that they're going to be they pay Jay Johnson. I mean, they're committed. LSU is going to be great in baseball. And so basketball is really nothing more right now than a bridge from whenever football ends to when baseball begins. And this year that's on Valentine's on February the 14th. And most people will sleepily make their way through this month until baseball starts and forget about basketball as they trudge through whatever they're going to finish here and get really pumped about baseball because Jay Johnson's team has got a chance to win and gymnastics has a chance to win. And people are fired up about LSU decided they wanted to be great in women's basketball. So they went and hired Kim Mulkey and paid her $3 million a year. And you've already won a national championship for it. And I mean, when LSU decides they want to be great at something, they will be. They'll be great at it. They just have never decided they want to be great in men's college basketball. And it's unfortunate because it's the second biggest collegiate sport. As much as we all love baseball here, baseball is a pimple on a bee's behind to men's college basketball nationally. So if LSU ever gets to a point where they decide maybe it's just one really, really rich booster who loves basketball and just decides he's going to dump. Maybe LSU ends up with a billionaire. Maybe Brandon Landry played at LSU, former walk-on at LSU, owns walk-ons. And maybe the walk-ons empire makes him a billionaire, and Brandon decides LSU is going to be awesome in basketball. I mean, maybe that day comes. I don't know. But that's what it's going to take because, wading waist deep into the SEC basketball pool like LSU is right now is only good enough to get you beat. To not be awful, but you're not going to be good. And I'm telling you, it's way more fun when you're expecting to hear your team's name called on Selection Sunday every March. And that's just not where this program is. And unfortunately, it looks like that's not where this team is going to be this year. Now, the flip side of that is baseball should be awesome. Jay Johnson went in the portal, landed the top portal class on top of the top or one of the top freshman recruiting classes, combined portal and freshman class, the consensus number one class of additions. And boy, it shows. LSU is the preseason number 2 team in the country, according to Perfect Game. Texas A&M, the national runner-up from this past year, preseason number 1, LSU, preseason number 2. But the honors continue to come in. So Perfect Game also announced their preseason All-America team, and it's 2 transfers that made the preseason All-America team. Incidentally, there was no Bear Jones. I mean, Bear Jones hit 28 homers a year ago. A little surprising that he wasn't on this list. But infielder Daniel Dickinson, who's coming in from Utah Valley, get to know the name. If you're not familiar yet, familiarize yourself with Danny Dickinson. He is probably going to be your starting second baseman. He's going to either hit leadoff or right there in the middle of the lineup, maybe in the 3-hole. But Dickinson a year ago at Utah Valley hit .363 with 18 homers, 14 doubles, 2 triples, 53 ribbies, stole 32 bases. MLB D1 baseball has him as the 31st best college prospect for this upcoming summer's draft. So you're talking about a versatile utility infielder who will probably play on the right side. Remember, you're returning Braswell, and Stephen Milam told me this summer this fall that Jay wants him to play on the left side. So Braswell and Milam will be the left side of your infield. Dickinson will be your second baseman, most likely, and Bear Jones will be your first baseman. But this is a guy who's got 20 homer power. He's probably going to be your starting second baseman. And you're expecting to be an all-conference, potential All-America type player. So preseason first-team All-America by Perfect Game. Get to know the name, Danny Dickinson. And the other is Anthony Ianson, who is a second-team preseason All-American. So Ianson is from California. Started his career at UC San Diego. The thing about Ianson is, I mean, he held opponents to a 190 batting average and struck out 85 in 82 innings pitched. He is long, he is twitchy, he is an explosive pitcher, and he pitched for the Team USA collegiate national team this summer as well. He's the number 45 college prospect by D1 baseball for this summer's draft. Ianson is a guy that you could very well expect to factor into the weekend rotation, at least at the start of the season. The one guy that I'm really confident is going to be part of the rotation, probably your Friday night guy, is Chase Shores, coming off of injury. And we're all excited to see Chase Shores realize his full potential. But, a guy like Zach Cohen from Wofford, who was Wofford's Friday night guy, what a great change of pace he might be from a guy like Shores, who's 6'7", throws 100. A guy like Cowan is 5'10", who's a changeup pitcher. So you want to talk about changing eye level and changing speeds and throwing at hitters, timing off, that could be a great way. And then you could follow with a guy like Ianson, who is got a whip-like action as well. That would make a lot of sense. I mean, everyone's excited about William Schmidt, the freshman who's coming in from Catholic High, who bypassed millions in the draft. There's no shortage of talent. There's no shortage of arms. But 2 names you better get to know: Danny Dickinson, Anthony Ianson, preseason All-America honors from Perfect Game. Okay, that'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On LSU. Now thanks for making this your first listen. Now for your second listen, go check out my guy Chris Gordy over at Locked On SEC on YouTube or however you get podcasts. If you are on podcasts, thank you so much. Please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified. Excuse me, that's YouTube. If you're on podcasts, thanks for listening. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you every single day. For Locked On LSU, your team every day.